London there in Washington, just repeating, saying that the Prime Minister is likely to leave the US within the next 15-20 minutes or so and head for Honolulu. No doubt trying to get back here as quickly as possible. We take you back to the ABC coverage now from America.
As a country that harbors terrorists, what did you make of the comments by the Supreme Leader of the Taliban yesterday about the attack? And do you think that that the Taliban are still harboring Osama bin Laden, and if he is deemed responsible for this attack, do you think that the Taliban will expel Osama bin Laden and help the U.S. bring him to justice?
I'm sure that the Taliban leadership providing protection and opportunities and facilities for Osama bin Laden. But I don't want to get into the hypotheticals as to whether or not he is responsible for it. A body of evidence is being developed, and in due course we'll make an announcement, but I don't think it's useful to say, well, we're 50%, 60%, 70% sure it's this organization or that. That just leads to very often incorrect answers, and I don't think it's helpful during this time. So as the evidence builds, and it is building, in due course, we will make a judgment, and we will act upon that judgment in the way the President has indicated.
The last one for Alan.
Mr. Secretary, what conversations do you anticipate having with the leaders of Persian Gulf countries? What support will you be seeking from them if, in fact, it's found that the threat originated in their part of the world? And what kind of military latitude would you like to be able to exercise in that part of the world that they're blessing?
If we think they can be helpful in finding those who may be responsible, we will expect that help, and we will express the point of view very, very clearly, and I've already started to do so in some of my preliminary conversations, and frankly, I expect support. They are outraged, they are shocked, they are stunned, whatever their views might be, or whatever the views of their people might be with respect to the crisis in the Middle East. They are stunned and find this to be a deplorable act. I think they are speaking not just as leaders, but as leaders of people who, although some might rejoice and shout, most find this to be deplorable and something to be condemned. And going back to an earlier question, obviously the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis has been going on for a long time and is always in the background, but some of the terrorist organizations that we have seen at work over the years conduct terrorist activities against the United States, regardless of how the peace process may or may not be going with respect to the Israelis and the Palestinians. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Leaders?
Beg your pardon?
Specific conversations you anticipate having? Will you be talking
with
to
who?
the Saudis, the Kuwaitis,
oh, yeah,
the Emiratis?
I've already had some conversations with Saudis, and I'll be doing more this afternoon. We're still changing time zones as I catch up on my phone calls. Thank you.
Was not the Pentagon. Ari Fleischer told our reporter at the White House that the target was not the Pentagon, but in fact the White House, and that Air Force One was also a target.
Ari said that?
Yes. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Could you give us more detail about that, what you've heard, but the intended target?
No, I don't have anything to go beyond what Ari said, and I really need to yield that part of it to intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Thank you.
Well done, Martha Raddatz. ABC's Martha Raddatz got into the briefing at the last moment there and managed to ask the Secretary whether he had indeed heard what Ari Fleischer told ABC News a short while ago, that they believe that the aircraft that attacked the Pentagon had as its original target the White House, and also believe that Air Force One was going to be a target. Now, we do not know, first of all, how they know that, and we'll try to pursue that along with my colleague John Miller here in just a moment, and also at the White House. But and we don't know when they know it, which is important in terms of the President's movements yesterday, because the President, you recall, who'd gone off to Florida on a trip about education yesterday, was then moved in a very erratic and secret fashion around the country. And Ann Compton, who was with the President all day and may be able to talk to us again this afternoon, told us in very dramatic fashion, you may recall, yesterday afternoon, I think we actually still have the video of it, as they were on their final leg of their journey, coming back from the Strategic Air Command base in Nebraska to Washington, They were able to look out their windows and see F-15s and F-16s. And as I said, I think we can actually see that on a piece of video right now. They had F-15s and F-16s as a jet fighter escort for Air Force One, and that was the first time she could remember that in many, many, many years. We'll come back to the Colin Powell briefing because there's quite a lot revealed in here, not least of which is the difficulty. Mr. Powell's talked to an awful lot of people today, but he's not been able to talk yet to General Musharraf, who is the military leader / dictator in Pakistan. And Pakistan's right next door to Afghanistan, raises a lot of questions. But in the meantime, with this important news in retrospect, let's go to Terry Moran at the White House. Terry, do we know how they know this?
Not at the moment, Peter, although we're expecting a briefing from Ari Fleischer shortly. What I can add is this. Yesterday, as I was coming into the White House, and we have pictures of this, people were essentially fleeing the grounds. And I talked to some of the White House staffers who said they were absolutely stunned. The White House has been evacuated before. In President Bush's term, when there was a car here parked on the driveway that was considered suspicious by one of the bomb-sniffing dogs, and the evacuation proceeded in a very orderly fashion. They like to do it that way. It communicates that they are not afraid of these kinds of things. One of the things the White House staffers told me was that they were originally told, please exit the building in an orderly manner, and then an agent came in very suddenly and said, no, just get out, just run. And that's what they did.
And remind me, I don't remember precisely what time that was yesterday, but the walk and then suddenly run may make a little more sense now. Do you remember what time precisely that was?
That would have been a little bit before 9:30. I would say between 9:15 and 9:30 when the building was evacuated. So that was after the planes had hit in New York, and just about the time, I guess, that they were hitting, that the plane hit the Pentagon.
Okay, Terry, anything else you want to add at the moment?
Well, all I can say is that Colin Powell is obviously singing from the same page as the president and everyone else in this administration. The real question here is, can they conceive a response that both satisfies their parameters of specifying the people who are responsible, and yet is commensurate, is big enough, nasty enough to meet the emotional demands of the American people and the Congress.
Precisely. Thanks very much, Terry Moran. And now let's go back to the State Department, where ABC's Martha Raddatz managed to get in and ask that key question. Well, not the key question, but a very important question for the moment. And we heard what you got out of him. Did other people mutter other things as you left?
No one muttered anything, Peter. They didn't want to say much beyond what Ari Fleischer said. But one of the things I would say is that this all makes sense. Hitting the Pentagon where the terrorists hit the Pentagon, they caused the least amount of damage in terms of a statement. You had these very precise, sophisticated strikes in New York hitting right at the heart of the Twin Towers. And yet at the Pentagon, you hit a side that was being renovated. Probably the least loss of life on that side. Didn't hit the side where the Joint Chiefs are, didn't hit the side where the Secretary of Defense is. And that actually struck me yesterday, that in the terrorists' planning, that might have been a flaw.
Well, I take your point, and just to be argumentative for academic sake at the moment, in fact, by hitting the Pentagon, the terrorists announced to the world that they were able to penetrate the very heart of the military establishment in the United States. And even we didn't know until quite late in the day that this was a part of the Pentagon, which in fact had recently gone through renovations. And in fact, the injury list is less than we anticipated it might be.
I wouldn't argue with you there, Peter. It certainly made a statement by striking the building. That's obvious. But it's very easy to find out where the Secretary of Defense is in that building. They're on the riverside. Everyone knows that. There's a parade field right next to it. It is a very prominent place in the Pentagon. And if someone really wanted to make a bigger statement, it seems that's where they would try to hit. Okay, Martha, I'm going to come back and talk, if we may, about Colin Powell and the country's dilemma in terms of the rest of the world in just a minute. But first to Capitol Hill and Linda Douglas. Linda, congressmen and senators have had briefings on the current situation. What have they learned, and you subsequently, from that?
Well, it's actually the House members who've just come out of their briefing with various intelligence officials and cabinet officials, and the headline of what they've been told is that they shouldn't have a false sense of confidence. These attacks may not be over. They were told we don't know what when or where, but this may not be over. That was very worrisome to the congressman I talked to. They were also told that the intelligence officials feel that they're 90% certain that Osama bin Laden was involved in this, but not the only one, that there were other financiers of this operation in addition to Osama bin Laden. They also told them that they believe that the Taliban government is supporting Osama bin Laden, and they said they have very good leads to some of the people that we've been hearing about all day long who are connected with Osama bin Laden. A final point, Peter, they were also told that some of the people who may be arrested, who they believe have ties to Osama bin Laden, might be arrested on charges other than those connections, such as immigration violations. But they're going out around the country looking for those people.
Let me just ask a couple of